A Libert Seguros agora é Yellon. Tudo aquilo que já era bom continua igual. Excelência e proximidade permanecem como nossa essência. Porque não é uma mudança, é uma evolução. A Yellon está sempre em sintonia com você. É liberdade com segurança. A melhor experiência acessível a todos os clientes, iluminando cada passo da sua jornada. Deixe essa luz iluminar seu caminho. Yellon Seguradora. Seguro para viver livre. Consulte seu corretor.
It's the morning after Election Day, and you are probably exhausted. Today in CityCast Las Vegas, I'm with my co-host Dayvid Figler, and we're going to parse what we know and what we don't know yet in our local and national elections. It's Wednesday, November 6th. I'm Sarah Lohman, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Okay, Dayvid, good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
Let's take a moment to talk about the presidential election. We're swing states. We haven't gone red since 2004.
Right.
But we went red last night. About 85% of our votes are counted, which is remarkable considering how long it took last election. Nevada's going to go for Donald Trump, 6 electoral votes. So are you surprised?
Well, if you're a purple state, sometimes you're blue and sometimes you're red. That's what makes you purple. Am I surprised? No. I've been quietly predicting that there was going to be a Trump victory in Nevada. I am surprised that pretty much all the swing states seem to have gone this way. That did shock me. I'm not, in tune to that degree, but I thought it would be a little bit closer. Here in Clark County, and we focus on where we are, predictably, Harris won the popular vote, but it was far closer than anyone had predicted. I mean, there was, probably just less than a percentage point between the two. And that'll probably hold. We do have uncounted ballots and uncured ballots that are out there in the ether, but statewide, it wasn't really that close.
So if you can't hear it in our voices, we're recording this at, it's currently 5:50 in the morning. So
I feel very peppy.
I can tell. I don't. Dayvid, what local races to Clark County have been called? Do you know?
Here's the interesting thing about our voting system. Because we have universal mail ballots, the percentage of votes in is a little bit of a fuzzy question mark. And so in years past, when we go to the various websites, you see that percentage, and you mentioned a percentage. I've seen that percentage in different places at a different level. So at one point during the middle of the night, I guess, the New York Times had reported that we were 91% complete with the count, and then that's been downgraded to 84. I've seen it also at 83. On the Secretary of State website in ye olden days, it used to have a legitimate percentage of counted votes. But They can't do that because there's votes in transom. There's votes in the mail still that have yet to be counted. And we also have this interesting dilemma this year with uncured votes. And so there's approximately 13,000 votes that came in but still need to be cured, which means that they came in, they were received, but they suffer from some deficiency which disallows them to be counted. And so there are 6 days now, because Veterans Day is in the middle of all that, for people to verify that it was indeed them and that it was the vote that they wanted to cast with the Secretary of State's office. So sure enough, the very, very close races that are still pending, especially county level here, are going to be reaching out to their various constituents. Now, here's how it breaks down. It's almost even between Democrats and Republicans as to the uncured. There's also a ton of these nonpartisans who seem to have been breaking towards Trump, but still uncertain how the down ballot races are going for him, if the nonpartisans were straight party down or if they were bouncing back and forth. So that's to be told. So we don't really know exactly what percentage is there. So Calling a race is hard unless you're way, way, way ahead. And there are some way, way, way aheads. So you want to go through those,
seems
Sarah?
like, Shelley Berkeley won.
It looks like Shelley Berkeley is the new mayor of Las Vegas, yes.
Yeah, as opposed to Victoria Seaman. Even though this is a nonpartisan post, we know that Victoria Seaman was the right-leaning candidate and Shelley Berkeley was the left-leaning candidate.
Yeah, so getting right down into the heart of city of Las Vegas, if people could figure that out, because it is technically a nonpartisan race, it breaks a little different than how sort of the rest of the state and even the county went as far as closeness, because Shelley Berkeley won fairly convincingly, as did the incumbent Stephen Horsford, who gets reelected. Dina Titus looks like she's going to hold on. It doesn't seem very close that any new votes or curing would change that. Susie Lee, a little closer. I think people aren't ready to call that one. So of our, and then Mark Amadei, who's sort of the northern part, he won handedly. He's the Republican up there. So it does not seem right now that our congressional delegation in the House of Representatives has changed, although Susie Lee is probably holding her breath right now.
And that has some impact nationally, correct? That means, so what's going to happen to our majority or minority in the House?
Well, that's where all eyes are right now. If there's any glimmer of hope that the Democrats are still hanging on to, is that there is a outside possibility that they have flipped the House of Representatives, but no one is making that call right now because of all the uncertainty. The call, however, has been made that the U.S. Senate has been flipped to Republicans. Major seats have changed hands. Joe Manchin's seat in West Virginia went Republican, as did Sherrod Brown in Ohio, as did John Tester's seat in Montana. And now, they have the majority, but all eyes are still on the very, very close Jackie Rose and Sam Brown right here in our community.
Right, which is too close to call at this point.
And I think it's going to be too close to call until November 12th. And if, I'm not one for predictions, but I will say that race is going to come down to maybe a couple hundred votes. That's my guess, if not tens of votes. That one is super duper close, and no one had expected that, especially a month ago. Jackie Rosen here in Las Vegas in Clark County did as well as one would expect. She was over 5 points ahead of her opponent. Statewide, they are within a 1/10 of a percentage point, basically.
Any other surprises?
Yeah, well, not necessarily surprised. We talked about it a little bit on the podcast. Again, we didn't do predictions per se, but for the first time in a long time, the Clark County Commission is going to have a Republican member on it. April Becker, the Republican there, successfully beat former Assembly person Shannon Bilbray Axelrod for a vacant seat on the county commission. The county commission has been all Dem for a really, really long time. And so this will probably not change the dynamic so much, but it is definitely a crack in that sort of blue county commission for Clark County. I think another race that a lot of people are shocked is that the very outspoken state senator Dallas Harris looks like she is going to go down and defeat to political newcomer Lori Rogich, although people will know the Rogich name as being her husband has been very involved in politics going back to the Reagan era. But she has established herself in certain circles of education, et cetera, and had an extraordinarily well-funded campaign, including an endorsement, curiously, from the Culinary Union, which we also talked about on the podcast, and that may have caused a difference. The only other race that's kind of the nail-biter right now is that the Speaker of the House, Democrat Steve Yeager, looks to be in the fight of his career for State Assembly District 9 with really less than a percentage point separating him from his challenger, Erica Neely. They're going to be looking very nervously at the new votes as they get updated.
Yeah, let's touch on ballot measures. I think, unsurprisingly, Nevada voted to codify abortion rights into our Constitution, which was already protected by law within the state. We saw that pretty much across the board in America, other than in Florida, who had to get a 60% majority. And, Rick Scott has been trying to make that his legacy. So I'm also sort of amazed, though, but I think it's lack of education that the voter ID law was 75% yes. That has to pass again, though, so that's not going into effect.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I think it's kind of a curiosity to this degree. This election did not require people to present an ID to vote.
Right.
And the voter ID still got 70% or whatever. So, I mean, it sort of begs the question, who are you hoping won't vote if we put this requirement on there when, it just never did make sense that it assumes that there is potential for widespread fraud or that fraud is happening. And it clearly doesn't, because look at the results. On the other hand, with voter ID, you don't have these curing issues to the same extent.
Yeah,
although it is a small percentage. I mean, when you're talking about well over 1 million votes being cast, only 13,000, although those 13,000 are very, very important for people like Jackie Rosen and Sam Brown right now.
Sure. But have you moved? Does your address not match your registration or your ID? You don't get to vote. That's kind of the result of voter ID
and that's
law.
the whole thing about these cured votes is like the signatures didn't match up, perhaps. And so the system does seem to work. And yet, 70%. Maybe more shocking is that almost 40% of the voters voted against removing slavery from the Nevada Constitution. And I think that pretty much speaks for itself.
Ugh. Also,
yeah, that's an ugh. I mean, it's a no-brainer one, and yet 40% looked at it, and it's like, well, maybe we should be. And I think that the only justification on that, outside of just ignorance, is you think that people who go to prison should be forced into involuntary servitude.
The ballot measures were impossible to read. I was chatting to someone in line who was then voting next to me, and I could tell that she was like reading the ballot measure again, especially that first one about, the Board of Education.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
so confusing for so many.
The other one that I don't know if it surprised me, but a big no to ranked choice voting in open primaries. Again,
so much money spent in that race.
Both of the parties, Republicans and Democrats, the one thing they're united on, in a way, because it will disrupt the two-party system. So I think there was a positive education, but again, that one is not necessarily lost forever. It could come back. I think it's a great idea. It would definitely open things up to be outside of the two-party system, and different candidates could get on there.
I think where it failed for most people was the twofer that was in there. And I understand why they had to go that particular way. There was litigation that sort of shaped it. But an open primary is one thing, and ranked choice voting is a different thing. And they were both, mashed up into this one bill. And I think that confused people. I think a lot of people would have voted for it if it was one or the other, but they had a harder time voting for it because it was both.
It does seem confusing. April Corbin-Gurnis explained it. Basically, if you have an open primary, that is also ranked choice. I mean, you can write down any of the candidates you like in any order from any party or independent party. And then, of course, that has to carry through to the general election, too. So they were connected. But again, lack of education, a lot of money from the two-party system to make it not happen. So the changes in our counting process actually did make a big difference. Last presidential election, we didn't have results until the Saturday after the Tuesday. And part of that is because that Trump solidly won in the state. But part of it is because we've been counting our votes since the 21st, unlike Pennsylvania, which was not allowed to process mail-in votes until Tuesday morning, too. So things have gone a lot faster.
And also a lot slower. So we aren't going to have our official results, and some races will not be called until the 12th. I mean, that's just going to happen because of our system. So cons, pros, I think the Secretary of State's office is doing a bang-up job. They're doing a good job communicating to people, getting that data and information out as best that they can. And it doesn't seem, thank goodness, that there were any significant incidences anywhere across the polling sites here in Clark County that were in any way disruptive or concerning.
Although bomb threats across the country, which is
Well, again,
new.
we're seemingly immune from some of this stuff, but yeah, some real nasty reports coming in from around the country. But again, as far as Las Vegas is concerned, it doesn't seem like that sort of shenanigery hit us, thankfully, and I hope for the future as well.
Well, what's next, David?
Well, the one race we didn't talk about that is probably the most impactful, and we're probably going to talk about it on our podcast here more than any of the other races, the almost complete change of composition of the school board trustees, of the Clark County School Board trustees. We have two people, one who is currently and one who until recently was affiliated with Moms for Liberty, the ultra-conservative group, who definitely make their mark in the type of education materials and perspectives to sports and things of that nature in a school district. So those new voices will be on the school board. And then in my district, Tamika Henry seems to have prevailed against the head of the school board trustees, Evelyn Garcia Morales, who, of course, was quite controversial over the past year with her support of Jesus Jara. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to definitely have a wildly different dynamic on the school board. So I think of all the elections, that's the one that is going to make us think the most, or actually provide probably the most amount of stories that we're going to want to talk about. But it is interesting up and down. I mean, we could go on and on about some of the surprises with the judges and some of the other down ballot elections. But
Well, what's next for you, David?
well, I still believe that all politics is local. There is a certain part of me that says meet the new boss, same as the old boss, although I think this might be the asterisk to that perspective of the top of the tickets. But all politics is local. And I am very active in my city politics at the county level as well. And, quite frankly, in the assembly. So, it just means as a citizen, as opposed to, the co-host of a popular podcast, I have to work a little bit harder. There is no supermajority for one party or the other. There are key bills that are going to be floating through the legislature that the governor has his power to veto. That's going to be a barrier for some bills that I would like to see advanced, especially in the area of housing. But locally, we have a whole new dynamic on our city council, and that impacts my neighborhood. So, I'm encouraged that these new voices will be there. Shelley Berkeley, who's been around for a while. Chandra Summers Armstrong appears to have also secured a seat on my city council. I look forward to working with these individuals, again, as a citizen, but also as a podcaster, and have them on and talk about the different policies that impact all of us, which is way more direct, I think, sometimes.
Well, I have appreciated your positivity this morning, David. You're working extra hard.
How about you, Sarah? I mean, I know that, personally you have some great disappointments in this election, but, we all have to move forward. We're all here together. I sent out a little note to my family that said, it doesn't matter what the election result is. We're all going to be looking out for each other. And I got, some nice responses, but also there's a little more to that, my friend.
I know.
But we all are looking out for each other. I'm here looking out for you too, Sarah.
I know. I'm sorry, listeners. I am actually tearing up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I do that sometimes. People are just like, stop talking, David. You're making me cry.
Yeah.
And not always for good reasons. I'll just say that right now.
I haven't had a cry about it yet. I've just been sort of dealing. Honestly, I'm scared, David.
Yeah.
I'm scared for immigrants. I'm scared for Black people. I'm scared for trans people. I'm scared for women because even though on the state level abortion rights, pass everywhere, I worry about a federal abortion ban. So if I can be super honest with you, and I do hope this stays in, I'm going to do something that I have been sort of kicking the can on a little bit in that I'm at a high risk for ectopic pregnancy. And I don't want to get pregnant and not have access to abortion rights and die. So, yeah, my first thing I'm going to do this morning is make an appointment with my OBGYN to have my fallopian tubes removed, which is what they do instead of tying them nowadays. So that doesn't happen to me. So that is the one thing I could come up with last night after I went to bed. And it was pretty clear that Democrats were going to lose to have some control over my life. But yeah, I'm exhausted.
But understand this, that tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions of people whose candidate did not win are still alive and active and are there to be a voice of dissent and to push for thoughtfulness and caring in our country. And they're not going anywhere. I don't think anyone's going to lie down, whether it's at the local level or the national level. I think people have been awakened to the real possibilities of things that you're talking about here, Sarah. And I don't think that they're going to go down fighting.
Awakened 8 years ago.
Well,
too.
I know that. But you know what? The fights continue. And they don't just go away because someone got elected to office. And that person, absent there being radical changes to our system of democracy, eventually go up for vote again. And there are other chances to have your voice heard. I don't want people to be discouraged as much as I know that there's lots of people who are disappointed. And there's also people who are jubilant. And this is just kind of how it works in Nevada and Las Vegas in particular. We are what we are. We have to focus on making the best lives for all of us. And, there are a lot of ways to do that. And, you take into account the results and then you do your best to move forward.
Yeah. Well, it looks
good or bad,
It looks like Republicans are going to get a chance to make the country in their image, including putting in conservative judges. So it's I wish I had a hopeful message like Dayvid, but it is not a good morning for human rights. So we will be back, Dayvid and I, for our Friday news roundup, where we are going to talk more election news. And this week we're going to have Steve Sebelius on, who is one of our favorite reporters and a super smart guy. And
now he's locked in. Steve, if you're listening, you cannot flake out on us. No, he's pretty much signed up.
Yeah. He doesn't. He's a good
guy.
Rebellious, the rebellious.
And he's going to be really smart about all this stuff too. So,
so the Senate race will probably still be too close to call. And we'll get a little deeper into election news on the local level. So thank you for this conversation, Dayvid. I'll see you later today.
See you later today.
That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, and leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Take care.